Hey guys, how's it going? If you don't know me, I'm Nathan of Flog Industries, and
I'm also with Flog Industries.
this is Kevin.
My name's Kevin.
So, today we're going to talk a little bit about our new series of bumper here, the Steel Demon Trucks model, and we're going to give you a little tutorial on putting that bumper together. We've been dying to make this video. This is exciting as hell for us to finally be doing this because we've had so much interest for it. Follow along.
This will be available as a DIY kit as well as a complete finish kit, just like our Flog line of bumpers. So what we need to do in the beginning is lay it out, all the individual pieces like this, so you can see how it works. And then any mating part, any of these that go together, those edges need a bevel. They need a little chamfer on there. And you can see here, we've chamfered it, but we've left a little bit of the flat surface. And that's so that when you're mating the parts together, you have a true edge. So you know that those edges need to mate. So that's the first step. Get a nice little bevel. You can do about 1/8 of an inch on a 45-degree angle is a pretty good standard with your grinder. I recommend a 40 grit flat disc on a 4-inch grinder. That allows you to have control of that angle without trying to run a monster grinder. So.
Bevel those outside joints so that when you put the parts together and you get a weld in it, then it has good penetration after you've ground the weld off to a smooth finish. So you can tell that's what Kevin's working on right now, is getting the parts beveled up. Hell yeah. Let's put this bad boy together.
We're going to start with the center section, the center piece. Mate the two sides to that, and then we'll go sequentially one way and then the other, mating those parts. We're using the parts to fixture, partly why it's important to leave those edges unsanded. We're using the parts to fixture this. And if we touch all the edges together precisely, when we're done it should come out to the exact dimension that we want. So We'll tack it together first, and then we'll test fit it on the truck next. Make sure that we don't need to do any major adjustments before we weld it out.
One question I have is where to start with the tack welding. What's the best theory you've come up with? So
what we do is we'll tack weld this, or we'll clamp the center section to a table like this, with the corners hanging off the table. That way we can access those points and they're not inhibited by that table. So first things first, we're going to clamp this to a table. In our shop we don't have a lot of equipment because we like to do shit the hard way.
He's not joking about that.
Oh, we do have the equipment. It's just probably over in the automotive bay or something.
Automotive, or maybe in the water jet bay.
The next part, if you want to come around to the back side, we'll kind of show. I like to have full access to the back, because that's where those lines really speak the truth. You can see how tight everything is.
Just line all those corners up, and
so this is the most critical point to line up.
That top edge.
It's this top edge, because it's flat. Once it's put together, it's flat. If those aren't lined up, you're gonna have a hell of a time
Trying to plane that?
Making that a flat surface afterwards.
We'll start putting this bad boy together.
I want to get another shot of this backside with the clamp on it, right where that mates. So you can see how we now have those two surfaces aligned. The next thing before you put a weld on, you want to make sure this inside corner right here, right there, is lined up. So you can see here I need to kind of bump in just a little bit to get those to plane.
You want those basically exactly flush with each other.
There's a small gap, but you want to plane them to where they come together and mate in the middle of that gap. And then your next point would be your next point of alignment, which I could just throw a hood on and weld those while you're videoing. See how it's not a massive weld, but it's just enough weld to not break off.
Hold that point, basically.
Holds that point. You want to weld right on that point so that this is still flexible. That allows you to align that next corner properly. So I started here. I'm going to go back and make sure that this is perfectly flush. I'll tack weld the very back. That's why I left my clamp away from that edge so I can tack weld it. Next, I'm just gonna sight the back side of it here. Hold it with my thumb, make sure we're good. Boom. So this next part, you got a long straight plane that's about 10 inches long. Your material has the ability to flex in that much space. And so to keep that straight, I'm gonna start about from the top side, and I'm going to weld every 2 or 3 inches along that edge.
You'll notice he held that bottom in a little bit to get the point of weld to be lined up with each other. By doing that, the overall finished product is a little bit nicer and well worth doing. He's working his way down that edge, double checking the inside, getting it lined up. This can be done two ways. You'll notice on this one, Kevin's been doing it by himself. A lot of it is to show that it can be done with one person. This whole bumper can be put together with one person.
So see how I've got a little bit of a height difference there? The parts were bent slightly different. What I'm going to do, I'm going to overbend that, put a tack weld right there. Hold that in place. Unless you don't weld it good enough, like I just did. You want to make sure you get just enough weld that holds it and not too much. The reason we don't want to weld too much quite yet is in case once we get it on the truck we got to cut some shit apart. You don't want to be butchering giant welds. So you still need a little bit of flexibility. You see how this brought that plane back together really nice? Now I'm just going to put one more
nice and lined up.
One more weld right on the back side of that.
Doing the other side here. Starting with that point on the top, getting it clamped together. That holds your top plane how you want. Getting those corners lined up. Those look really good. Today Kevin's using the 140C from Lincoln Electric. We chose the smallest welder in our shop because, once again, to emphasize that it does not take too special of equipment to do this process. If you have a small welder, you shouldn't have any issues putting this together. Small welder and a grinder and a couple of clamps, you should be set. Working his way down this one like we did the other side.
The next point of reference would be
this angle right here.
These 2 points, this point and this point. You'd make sure that you come around the back, you can see it. You can see there that you have a pretty good mating reference by using these 2 points here and here. I'm going to start with this top reference. I'm not going to weld this panel yet until I get the rest of this set, because this is still flexible. So we'll start at the top panel. Here I'm using a lot of my chest and stomach to kind of hold this in place, because I am doing it by myself. So again, I'm going to work down that edge, making sure that it's mated together properly.
You have that edge as a reference. You got the same snug fit all the way across that. In the next panel, you have the same snug fit. By lining all those up precisely, what happens is when you get done, your bumper's the right width.
This is one more critical reference point. We want to make sure that this is also flat, this mating plane.
That's where you'd use your clamp again to get that flat. Flat or parallel with the panel that it welds to, if that makes sense, that top edge. Depending on the model of the bumper that you are putting together. Getting those lined up, you can see how those two bend lines come right together. You threw a straight edge on there to get that precise.
And make sure that edge is nice and true all the way across before I weld this next point. You can see how it's touching all the way across.
And then you weld that point right there.
And I'll weld this next point, which is going to hold this flat. After that, you just want to come up here, and this should just be a full fillet, touching these points together. Bring this gap a little bit tighter together, and also make this edge line up a little better. So then I'm gonna go right on this point and do a nice weld and fill up that area.
Got a nice good tack weld.
So by doing that, I attached all 3 parts together in one tack weld. You can see how parallel those are there. We should be good to put one more weld right there on the back side. Tying in that end. All right, we'll move on to the next part.
Don't judge the tack welds. This is Kevin's first day on a welder.
So yeah, if you're looking at these like as to judge me, don't.
As you can tell, just working the pile away.
The reason this does that is going from a computer model where all of your bends are perfect, all your radiuses are precise, to a still part where you have what they call spring back and variables within your material thickness and your material density. That'll kind of change the way this actually bends up. But you can see here we've got everything about as good as you can ask for.
Once again, checking to make sure we're parallel. Getting those points parallel is the most critical thing to making sure that the finished product turns out flat.
That just arced the shit out of me. I was leaning on that box.
Really?
See, I did the little pin jump.
Once again, that's the end cap, the final piece to the puzzle.
There you have a shell.
That looks really good. Process of assembly and fabrication of the DIY kit Steel Demon trucks. So stay tuned, I'll walk you through the next steps on how to go about welding it out and grinding it up. When you're picking these things up, I recommend lifting smart, don't hurt yourself. What I'll do is I'll pick up one side, get in a stand-up position. Pretty good position right there. Now I need to get the interior mounting brackets and need to check my overall width, make sure we're good to go. So in your kit, you'll have one of these papers. And this gives you essentially the only two critical dimensions there are. This top number is the width of the bumper. And that's the widest point, from the widest point to the widest point. That's referencing this angle right here, because this is wider than this. So you hook a tape here and you'll pull it across. Let's go ahead and do that. Right now we're 80 1/4, so I'm gonna put my positioning bar on there, and we'll spread that out a little bit for the welding process. That was Kevin's first day on the welder, so I'm gonna be the one welding the bumper up today. We want it to turn out good. I'm sure all of you are pro welders, and
are you dissing on Kev?
I'm sure you're all pro welders, and welding up something like this, piece of cake. So well, I'm pretty much ready to go. I forgot one important step. What this does for us, and those of you that are familiar with the welding process of anything really, this gives us a fixture is the right word for it, a fixture that holds the bumper at a certain width, because when you weld it, as you're welding, the bumper tries to do this a lot, because you weld over here and it heats up and expands and then it shrinks harder. You need something that holds that exactly how you want it to be held. That way when you get done, your bumper's the right width, you're good to go. So what I'll do is I'll tack weld that right on this corner. Now as you recall, we were too narrow on our overall width. So I'll find a clamp that helps me spread the bumper out. We'll get that spread out to where we think it's about right, and then I'll double check with the tape. So what I'm gonna do, it calls for, on this particular model, it calls for 80 1/2. Right now we're right at 80 1/2. We wanna go 80 3/4 because it will shrink about that much. After we take the clamp off, it's been welded up. So we'll pull that out a little bit more. All right, we're pretty much sitting right where I want us to be. The issue that a lot of people have had in the past when doing DIY kits on bumpers is, how do you keep that thing from warping out of shape? Well, this is the process that we use. So now the next step is to put our brackets inside here, and we'll put the light tabs on as well. But we'll get I'll grab the brackets, we'll get those set. On these parts, I recommend cleaning them up a little bit, make sure there's no kerf from the cut. Kerf is the sharp edge that comes from a cut, whether it's plas cut, water jet. Just clean them up a little bit. The more you clean the parts up, the better the paint holds to that corner. So a sharp edge always causes the paint to crack right there, and that's where rust starts. Don't be afraid to spend a little extra time, clean it up as much or as little as you want. It's 100% up to you at that point. On your bumper, these have alignment pins. They'll have an alignment system to where these parts sit right in here exactly where you want. And it takes all the guesswork out of it for you. All right, I'll just double check my width. 31.5 inches is what you want the center of those holes to be. And if you look at my tape, there's this little groove right here that's part of the cut. I hook it there and I come to measure to this side. I'm right there at 31.5. That's the proper width for those holes for your studs to line up to. And if this is a rear bumper, that changes a little bit, but once again, don't let that detail scare you. Your build sheet's gonna have that information that will make it pretty hard to mess it up, if that makes sense. So I have this level on here as a straight edge. It just tells me that these brackets are flat. You can trim the back sides or grind them a little bit to get that sitting flat if you need to. So what I'll do real quick here again is I'll double check. I'm going to use a reference point to double check that these are sitting really close, if not perfect. So I'll measure I'll hook it on that edge and I'll bring it down to this point. And what this says isn't critical as long as it's the same. If your width is what you want, and this point and this point are the same, you know your bumper is sitting good, because a lot of times you can have the right width, but one side will be bent out, one side will be bent up. So by double checking those dimensions, we know that our bumper's sitting the right shape. Got the inside all welded up. Those are these little bend relief cracks that I just went ahead and put a bead on. Once you get the inside welded up, then next step is to flip it over and weld up the outside. You have one weld right here and one weld right here. You use these studs, you press the studs through both plates. That's how that works. Just like that, it's ready to bolt to the truck and, well, paint it first. Next stop is the paint shop. Got her all sanded up how we want. We're headed to get paint on it.